My name is Margaret Ellis, and I'm 96 years old. And the greatest love of my life began with a mistake I carried like a quiet regret for nearly half a century. For years, I believed I had married the wrong man. Not the man who made my heart race, not the man people call a soulmate. Just a stubborn machinist with grease on his hands and a crooked tooth who never remembered anniversaries. And yet, 64 years later, he was the only person in the world whose silence could fill an entire house. You see, people talk about soulmates as if they're something you stumble upon, like a shiny coin on the sidewalk. I believed that too once. I believed that if love was real, it would feel effortless, perfect, like a song that never hits a wrong note. But the man I married, Harold Ellis, well, he was never that song. I met him in 1953, the summer I turned 21. The world was different then. Bread cost 16 cents a loaf at the market on Maple Street, and my father still believed a woman's life began and ended with finding a husband who could keep the lights on. Harold worked at a machine shop that made parts for farm tractors. His hands were always dark with grease, and he had this crooked tooth that showed when he laughed, which, to be honest, wasn't often. He wasn't the kind of man women wrote poems about. In fact, the first time he asked me out, I almost said no. I had another boy circling around me then, Daniel Whitaker, tall, charming, the kind who opened doors and remembered every little thing you said. If life were a movie, Daniel would have been the obvious choice. And Harold, well, Harold would have been the fellow standing awkwardly in the background. But Daniel wanted adventure. He talked about leaving town, seeing Europe, chasing some big life I couldn't quite picture. Harold, on the other hand, wanted something simple. A small house, a patch of grass, a kitchen that smelled like supper at 5 o'clock. So I married Harold, not because he swept me off my feet, but because he felt steady. In 1956, we bought our first house. I remember the exact number because Harold repeated it like a prayer for months. $7,900, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The wallpaper in the kitchen had tiny yellow flowers that made me dizzy if I stared too long. Harold built a fence in the backyard that first summer. I helped him carry the boards while our neighbor, Mr. Jensen, leaned over the property line offering advice nobody asked for. We planted tomatoes along the fence. I burned the first 3 dinners I tried to cook, and Harold ate every bite anyway. It wasn't a grand love story, but it was ours. Now, before I continue, I want to say something important. I'm grateful to this channel for listening to an old woman like me and giving my voice somewhere to go. At my age, most stories disappear quietly with the people who lived them, and it means something that this one won't. If you're watching, you can subscribe, it's free, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one of them when the nurses help me with the tablet. And if you have a story of your own, the link in the description lets you share it too. Someone out there might need to hear it. Now, where was I? Ah, yes, the early years of our marriage. They were not what people call romantic. Harold had a temper that flared like dry wood catching flame. If the car wouldn't start, if the bills came in higher than expected, If the boys next door trampled our tomatoes, he'd slam the door hard enough to rattle the windows. And I was stubborn. There were nights we slept on opposite edges of the bed, our backs turned like two countries refusing to speak after a war. I remember once in 1962, during a terrible heat wave, the fan in our bedroom stopped working. We argued about whose fault it was, which made no sense at all. It was a fan. It had no loyalty to either of us. But we fought until 2 a.m. anyway. I sat at the kitchen table crying, convinced I had made the biggest mistake of my life, because this wasn't what love was supposed to look like. Everywhere I turned, people talked about passion and destiny. Magazines promised perfect marriages if you followed 10 easy steps. But Harold and I, we seemed to be failing every single one. There were signs, too, little things that made me believe I had chosen wrong. He forgot anniversaries, more than once. He hated dancing, even though it was my favorite thing in the world. And once, during a Christmas dinner with my parents, he fell asleep at the table while my mother was still talking. I wanted to disappear into the floor. For years, I thought I had settled. I watched other couples who seemed smoother, sweeter, easier. My friend Eleanor married a man who wrote her poetry. Another friend, Claire, had a husband who brought flowers home every Friday. Harold brought home calloused hands and silence. And I believed, truly believed, that somewhere out there existed a man who would have been the right one. That was my blindness. Because I was so busy measuring what Harold wasn't, that I almost missed what he was. The moment that changed everything came quietly, the way most important moments do. It was 1978. I was 46 years old. Harold had been working overtime at the machine shop for months. Something about a new contract, long hours, complicated parts. I didn't understand the details. All I knew was he came home later and later each night. One evening, he didn't come home at all. No phone call, no message, just an empty driveway and a clock that kept crawling forward. By midnight, my mind had built 100 terrible explanations. An accident, another woman. Maybe he'd simply decided after 25 years that he'd had enough of me. Around 2 a.m, there was a knock on the door. 2 men stood on the porch. For a moment, my heart stopped. But they weren't police officers. They were Harold's co-workers. And behind them, leaning heavily against the truck, was my husband. His face was pale, his shirt soaked with sweat. He had collapsed at the factory, a heart attack. They said if he had been alone, if someone hadn't noticed, he might not have made it. The doctors kept him in the hospital for weeks, and that's where I saw something I had never noticed before. Every morning when I arrived, Harold would already be awake, staring at the door, waiting. Not for the nurses, not for the doctor, for me. One day I asked him, half joking, why he looked so worried every time I stepped out of the room. And he said something that broke me open in a way I didn't expect. He said, "Because I never told you. But every day you came home from the grocery store, every day you walked out that front door, I wondered if something might happen to you, and I'd have to live in that house without you." I had spent 25 years believing I married the wrong man. And yet, here he was, terrified of a world where I wasn't beside him. When Harold came home from the hospital, life didn't suddenly become perfect. We still argued. He still forgot anniversaries, and he still refused to dance. But something inside me shifted. I stopped waiting for him to become the man I imagined I deserved, and started seeing the man he had quietly been all along. The man who fixed the porch steps every spring without being asked. The man who drove 3 hours through a snowstorm once just to bring me the scarf I forgot at my sister's house. The man who never said, "I love you," very often, but showed it in 1,000 small ways I had been too blind to see. The truth is, lasting love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about choosing the same imperfect person again and again, even on the days when they drive you absolutely mad. Harold and I were married 64 years. 64. We raised 2 daughters, buried our parents, argued about money, laughed at terrible television shows, and sat through more quiet evenings than I can count. And near the end, when his hair had gone thin and his hands trembled when he poured his coffee, he looked at me one morning and said something that still echoes in my chest. He said, "Margaret, I'm glad you picked me. I know I wasn't the best option." I laughed so hard I cried, because for most of our life, I believed the exact same thing. Harold passed away on a rainy afternoon in October, the kind of rain that taps gently against the windows like someone asking to come inside. The house felt enormous without him. His chair sat empty in the living room for months. I couldn't bring myself to move it. Sometimes I still catch myself turning to tell him something, a funny story from the news, or how the tomatoes in the garden finally grew the way he liked them. Then I remember. At 96 years old, most of the people who shared my life are gone. My friends, my siblings, even some of the neighbors who watched us build that first crooked fence. The world gets quieter when you live this long. That's the strange curse of surviving. You carry the memories, but the people who shared them slowly disappear. So now I sit by this window in the evenings, watching the sky fade from gold to gray, and I think about the idea of soulmates. People still chase that perfect match like it's hidden somewhere out there waiting. But after 96 years on this earth, I believe something different. The right person isn't the one who completes you. It's the one you learn to understand, piece by piece, day after day, even when it's difficult. Harold wasn't the man I dreamed of when I was 21, but he was the man who stood beside me through every ordinary Tuesday and every unbearable loss. And somehow, those ordinary days became the most extraordinary life. If you're listening to an old woman ramble from her quiet little room tonight, maybe you're wondering if the person beside you is the right one. I can't answer that for you, but I can tell you this. Perfection is a myth that leaves a lot of lonely people behind. Love, the real kind, is something quieter, something chosen, something built slowly, like a fence in the backyard, one board at a time, until you look up one day and realize it's been protecting your life for decades. And if you're lucky, very lucky, you'll still be thinking about that person when you're 96 years old, sitting by a window, wishing you could tell them just one more thing. In my case, it would be simple. I'd tell Harold that marrying the wrong man was the best mistake I ever made. And maybe, just maybe, saying it out loud like this makes the room feel a little less lonely tonight.